Wow, full house today. Hello, everyone. Thank you for making time to attend the town hall today. I want to just make sure that we are attentive to a change that we are making in the town halls. We are not recording Q&As in the town halls. So if people have questions, they can send them in ahead of time, or they can be in the audience and we can have conversation. So we are not recording, especially since so many of the subjects that we're talking about nowadays are pretty sensitive. So welcome to our May, I'm like, what month is this? May Town Hall. Just a reminder that every other month is an update, and then the next month is a drill down on a substantive issue. This month is a drill down on budget, which I'm sure is on everyone's mind after the President and Provost Town Hall on budget last week. Was that just last week, May 7th? So as usual, we start our meetings with our land acknowledgement. We recognize that all of us at UW Tacoma learn, live, and work on or near the ancestral home of the Coast Salish people. In particular, we are situated on the traditional territory of the Puyallup tribe. And as people on this occupied territory, we have a responsibility to acknowledge the land, the ancestors who have cared for this land since time immemorial, and all of our indigenous connections today. We also have a responsibility to acknowledge the history of dispossession and forced removal that have allowed for the growth and survival of this university. In light of this history, let us take active efforts to partner with our indigenous community members and neighbors as we continue our work together as a community of learners, leaders, and educators. And we always try and make it concrete examples of some of the things we're doing. Otherwise, they are just words. And I was pleased to hear that our IDEA grant was reinstated. And that is the grant that we have in partnership with, yes. We have that in partnership with Green River Community College, and we're sending students up this summer to UBC, and they will talk about indigeneity in the Canadian context as well as the US context. And so we'll have indigenous Canadian students with some of our indigenous students from Washington, and I'm actually planning to go up and have dinner with them and others on the UBC campus to talk about what we might do together in the future as well. So pretty excited about that. So today we have a very full agenda. I wanted to start by just giving an update because I realize that not everyone is in our meetings that we have weekly update meetings where we are talking about what's happening with our research grants, what's happening with federal financial aid, what's happening with immigration and deportation issues, and also, there are 5 areas and I always forget them. Financial aid, research, immigration, and DEI, how could I forget that? Equity and inclusion and all of the policies that are coming out of the other Washington related to that. And then any communication that we feel that we need to do around those things. So many of you may be impacted by this. We have had grants paused, and we've received stop work orders for grants from the National Science Foundation, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the National Science Foundation. Cheryl and her team are working with those PIs. In some cases, we may be able to refer them to the AG because there are some lawsuits that are going on around some of these pauses and contract terminations. But it's on a PI by PI case that Cheryl Greengrove and her team are working with that. So if you are a PI and you get a notification asking you to certify anything or telling you that your work is paused or that you have a stop work order or termination, please reach out to Cheryl and let her know so that we can begin the analysis of, is this something that we can appeal? Is this something that is part of a lawsuit? And where does it fit in the whole continuum of the work that we are doing around federal research grants? So many of the faculty received notice last week that we have paused on any new National Science Foundation grants going in. And that is a university decision to pause because NSF has said any new grants will only have a 15% indirect cost recovery rate. And for those of you who don't know, our indirect cost recovery rate for NSF has been around 55%. So to cut it down to 15 is a big deal. And so trying to determine whether the university is trying to determine, is this something that can be part of an ongoing lawsuit around indirect cost recovery, because there is one that is nationwide around this, or what can we do? But we're not accepting any new NSF grants right now. The other thing is the University of Washington is under investigation for many things. The first one being that we were already under investigation for anti-Semitism activity related to the encampment last year on the Seattle campus. And we then were added to an investigation of 45 other universities around our diversity, equity, and inclusion activities. And then just last week, we got a letter that we are under watch and that they are looking closely and totally criticize the UW for the protests that took place in the engineering building on the Seattle campus week before last. So that's at least 3 investigations, and we are also under a continuing resolution from the Department of Education. So there are a lot of things that are happening for and to and with the university in terms of federal grants. If you have questions about any of those or concerns, please reach out to either your vice chancellor, or you can send notes to me directly and we can try and answer. But I will just strongly encourage PIs, work closely with Cheryl to keep her in the loop so that she knows what is going on. And then the provost has a federal policy website, and that website is for all 3 campuses because it has been vetted by the Attorney General. And so we have to be careful whatever we put in writing and put out. And so that website is where we're keeping the most up-to-date information from the Attorney General, from the federal government, and our interpretation of how we as a university are responding to those things. Finally, the other thing on federal grants, that on the federal policy is they are working on the next fiscal budget for the federal government. There were some proposals in that budget that are very alarming for all of higher education, including limits on who would be eligible for Pell Grant and the amount of Pell Grant funding that would be available nationally. Changes in student loan opportunities, including parent loans and graduate student loans, a number of changes to repayment options like forbearances and I was going to say terminations, not termination, but a lot of changes to federal policy around student loans, which we think would make education even less accessible for low-income students. So we are part of a number of, I call them the alphabet organizations. So ASCU, American Association of State Colleges and Universities, which is the regional universities. We're also part of AAU, which is the American Association of Universities, which are all the primary research universities. Member of ACE, the American Council on Education, and a member of AANU, which is the American Association of Colleges and Universities, AACU. And APLU, how could I forget that? American Association of Public Land Grant Universities. And that's where our Coalition for Urban Serving Universities sits, is in APLU. So all of those organizations and many more, including AAUP, which is the university professors, are all involved in lawsuits and writing letters and advocating for different policies, especially in this budget cycle. So stay tuned and we will see what happens with that. So I wanted to start there, and then this almost seems like a bad sort of sandwich where I have bad news, Bad news, good news, bad news. So we're going to have something at the end that's a little bit more upbeat. But in the meantime, I'm going to invite Mintha to come up and give us some good news about commencement. So Mintha.
So good afternoon, everyone. You all know me well enough by now that that is always going to be the prompt. So good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much. It is nice to see everyone assembled in the room. And yes, indeed, I'm going to bring forward something that is a bit joyful, and that is related to commencement. So we can get a little bit of a dance on, right? Just a little bit. So in the next few weeks, we will indeed be celebrating the graduating class of 2025. And so there's so much that's happening on the campus, happening in the world, happening around us. And you're wondering, is this really a celebratory moment? And the answer is indeed yes. We have more than 1,200 students who have accomplished the goal of being eligible of earning a degree. For a lot of those students, they are the first in their families to earn a degree from college, or the first in their families to attend college and to earn a degree. They've made lots of sacrifices. We've poured a lot into them in terms of the work that we do in the classroom and outside of the classroom. And so we really, really want to, as a community, celebrate with them, celebrate all of the efforts and all of the labor. So I want you to take some time later on to visit the UW commencement homepage. It has all of the information as it relates to commencement at this moment in time. So the date indeed is Friday, June 13th. That's a magical date for us, June 13th. We're going to make it a good day. It's a celebratory day. Again, 1,200 students, I think, have registered thus far for commencement. We're expecting well over 10,000 family, guests, and friends. It's at the Tacoma Dome. Students have been receiving information throughout the week. Several weeks, they have purchased caps and gowns, and there's a lot, again, enthusiasm happening. From our vantage point as faculty and staff, commencement is indeed a campus effort. We have a small but mighty committee of faculty, staff, and students who aid us in shaping the commencement program. But at the end of the day, it's all of us who come together and share our time and effort and energy in that day. So this is how I would like for you to be involved and how you can plug in. An email message was sent on May 12th that outlined all the different ways that an individual could participate in commencement. As an aside, it is an expectation from all the vice chancellors that their staff are engaged in commencement. It is an expectation from all the vice chancellors that staff members and faculty are engaged in commencement. I do want to give a shout out to faculty members over the last couple of years that we returned to the Tacoma Dome. The interest level and participation level has grown amongst faculty as well, and I do want to acknowledge that too. Teamwork makes the dream work. All of us are coming together in this space. Also, like I said, be prepared to work at the Tacoma Dome. Advise graduates, including our graduate students, that it is the expectation to remain seated and present throughout the entire program. How many of you were at the Tacoma Dome last year? Didn't you see things kind of spill out? You saw the first row depart, then you saw the second row, and the next thing, like 15 different rows the students had departed. We are working really, really hard to try to curb that this time around. We're going to expedite some of the activities so that things move at a quicker pace. But at the same time, any conversation you can have with an individual to let them know that commencement is a really important tradition. It's something that is one in which we want to be respectful of all families and graduates, and to keep those butts in the seat until the very end. Direct quote, Ms. Mintha said, keep your butt in the seat until the very end. And then afterwards, because it is a high point, we are wanting folks to come and gather with us afterwards. More information will be shared later about a chancellor's reception. I dubbed it the chancellor's reception. I hope you're okay with that. And that's an opportunity for us to come together as a community and just really be in company with each other. So that's commencement 2025. The date again, Friday, June 13th, all hands on deck. Opportunity for us to be there to see all of those students who have had such a fabulous journey with us, celebrating their highs and their lows. Also for us to become reconnected with our fellow staff members, our fellow colleagues, our fellow faculty members, and at the end of the day, just be really, really excited about being a part of the UW-Tacoma community. So that's what I have for you all. Thank you.
I do want to emphasize the party afterwards, and it is the Chancellor's reception. This year, given our budget situation, I am personally paying for this, so you all should know that it is, anybody who's been here any while, you know, I love graduation. It is what we put in all this time for every day. And for our students, because so many of them are first in their families, it means so much to them to have to participate in commencement. And so we need to show up for them, and I know it means that, you know, you're taking time away from your regular day job to do this, but it's what we're working for every day, and then we want to celebrate each other afterwards. So commencement is exhausting, it's a lot of work, and at the end, we do want to celebrate and party and sort of give each other a high five for getting through another academic year. And as Samantha said, you know, we started the fall with a lot of hope and optimism, and I will say that we started the year then, so we started the academic year with hope and optimism. The calendar year in January, it has been downhill since then. And a lot of that is related to what is happening with those federal policies that I talked about, but also we entered a legislative session with a $12 billion shortfall in the state budget, and then we began to get notifications of all these grants changes at the federal level, and you know, for us, it's been millions of dollars, but on the Seattle campus, it's billions of dollars that's at risk. So it has been, between the state budget and the federal budget, any one of those alone would be issues for concern, but together they have created a sense of urgency around what we do with our budget. I will say that here at UW-Tacoma, we have been on enhanced monitoring since I got here. It's like, that was a big surprise. My October, I started September and October, it's like, oh, we have a budget deficit. So we have been on enhanced monitoring since fall of 21. The irony is, this is our last year on enhanced monitoring, but it has placed us in a position that despite the changes and the reductions that we're going to have to make, we are better positioned at Tacoma than many of our colleagues on the Seattle campus, because they have not had to, they are trying to do what we've been doing for the last 3 years, which is adjust their budgets to fit spending and revenue to be better aligned. As you all heard from the President Provost, the University of Washington has spent hundreds of millions of dollars more than it receives. It's $600 million over the last few years. So we are, with that structural deficit, which is what we had when I got here to Tacoma, we corrected that for Tacoma in my second year here. So we don't have that, but there are a number of units on the Seattle campus that do have that. So although this is reductions are never easy, we are starting from a place of strength. And so I'm gonna ask Cherie to come up and give us the overview of what we know thus far and what we are planning for, and then we will turn off the recording and do Q&A after that. Thanks.
Thank you, Sheila. I'm Cherie Berthon, and I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor for Fiscal Planning and Budget. It's good to see such a good crowd here today. I am like the heel of the bread on the bad news sandwich. But it's good. It's sad to see that bad news is what gets folks to the town hall, but it is what it is. So, and as you know, we'll be recording this presentation. These slides will be posted on our website, and the links that you're going to see in the slides are live, so you can access these slides and follow the links to get more information on a number of topics. So to give us a sense of the context, I think this first few slides are all about context and how have we been handling the environment that's been changing over the last 6 months or so. Back in January, the provost began the Together We Thrive program. Here in Tacoma, we really weren't that impacted by it because that was the point at which the schools and all elements of the campus or the university were asked to meet these obligations that we had already been meeting under enhanced monitoring. So in a lot of ways, we were just able to say, here's what we're doing for enhanced monitoring, and it met and exceeded the expectations of what was being asked under Together We Thrive. But as you know, the last few months, the messages have been getting more dire, and we have seen a number of messages from the provost to curtail any non-essential spending, and then to begin exploring reduction scenarios of 5 and 10%. Those were broad messages from the provost, and we'll get more into what that's meant for us. We'll cover federal, state, and then UW budget impacts. But as you all know, I'm just repeating a lot of what Sheila has already said. But we have had about not a large number of federal grants, but I would say 5 or less. But one of them was $5 million and was essentially canceled or dropped to $1 million. I'm not using the right term, but essentially we lost $4 million of a $5 million grant very recently. And other grants, so we have experienced on this campus some direct impacts of federal grants being curtailed, but our biggest exposure is on the financial aid side, is the potential changes if we were to see reductions in federal financial aid. That's our biggest area of exposure from a financial perspective. In the state as well, we've talked about some of this before, so I'll be fairly brief about it. There are 3 main negative impacts from the state budget. Our tuition policy remained what we thought it was going to be going in. There is a across-the-board reduction of 1.5% to all of higher ed's appropriations, all public higher ed. There is less money for our compensation increases than we asked for 100%. We thought we would get 60 as we received in past years, but we actually are receiving closer to 43% of the costs for our compensation, which means more revenue has to come from our local sources, and at the same time, we're making cuts. So that does compound the costs. We also had a very big employee benefit rate increase, particularly healthcare benefit rate increase, that wasn't known until mid to late March. And so that we did plan for some increase of about 3%. In fact, the increase is more like 6%. So we're having to go back and find resources for those extra expenses. Just to note the provisos, we were at risk of losing part of one of our engineering provisos, but that is retained in full. That is the good news. Also, post-prison pathways is continuing indefinitely into the future. And then, but unfortunately, our student support proviso was not renewed. So that was only a 2-year proviso. So this link, as you can see, this will take you to the UW Town Hall. If you haven't watched it, the president and the provost and Sarah Norris Hall gave a very dire overview of the current situation for the university. And so I would just encourage you to watch that if you haven't. What we learned from that is that impacts are up to 6.5% in reductions in the university. Impacts are going to vary across the schools and campuses, but 6.5% is the highest percent that we did here in that town hall in terms of needing to make a reduction in the next year. One of the messages that I think is important to take away from that is they don't know that this is a short-term problem. There are a lot of indications that this could be a multi-year problem, both at the state and federal level. So they're trying to be as forthcoming as possible about the potential impacts, and with what we know now, we are looking at immediate reductions for the year beginning July 1st. I'd like to take a couple of slides on, just get wonky around the dollars and the revenues, because I think it helps to understand. And again, this can be downloaded, and you can find this in a number of places on the UW websites, but this is essentially our revenue stream into the current year budget. So not next year, but this year. And this is for the entire university, both the medical enterprise and the academy. And we have approximately a $12 billion budget for the entire university. 6 of that is the academy, the other 6 is the medical enterprise, or patient services, as it's referred to here. Within the academy, about 32% of the revenue that our university depends on comes from grants and contracts. Within that 32%, 60% of that is federal. So if you do the math, that means almost 20% of the university's budget is federal grants and contracts, which is explaining the tremendous risk that they are facing, that we are all facing, that's particularly dire for the schools on the Seattle campus. And then to try to offer a comparison where our various impacts are and our vulnerabilities. This is narrowing in on the UW Academy on the left side, and their annual budget, this is from last year, so that I could look at a full year of expenditures and revenues. And so the revenues from last year were over $6 billion for the academy. Of that, 32% was grants and contracts, and that equates to $1.2 billion in federal money for, so approximately, again, 20% of the entire budget. For us on the Tacoma campus, our total revenue last year was $113 million. 28% of that was the general state allocation. 3% is provisos, which is also a state allocation, but for targeted investments. And 57% is tuition and associated fees. And that is, as you know, our area where if we were to see, because so many of our students receive financial aid, that is our area of exposure. We're about 5% gifts, about 6% grants and contracts. And within that, it is mostly federal. So about $6.6 million of our total revenue is federal in last year, and just a small percent for auxiliary and sales. So with that context, getting more specific about what UW Tacoma is doing for budget reductions. We began late last month to ask leadership to consider 3% and 5% reductions to what's called their core funds. That's essentially what we budget. We don't try to budget gifts and grants at a broad campus-wide level. We focus on those funds that are flexible, so tuition, state allocation, summer tuition, and some other local funds. And so our base budget that excludes our one-time obligations and excludes our provisos is about $88 million. On Friday, we got a target from Seattle, from UW Seattle, and that target is almost $3 million, or $2.977 million. And compared to that base budget of almost $88 million, it's about a 3.4% cut. And so as Sheila mentioned, we're in a better position financially overall, but in some ways I know some folks are discouraged that we have been making cuts for 3 years, and now we are doing it again, right when we thought we were coming up and out of that. And I agree, it's discouraging. It is the reality, though, considering our university situation and both the state and the federal situation. So what I also would note is we have a specific dollar target to reduce from our budget for next year. And there are still a few things we're waiting to know. So 2 weeks ago, we shared in our recent meetings, we've shared what we do know, and at that time, we began the 3% and 5% cuts. Now we know our target is a 3.4% cut, but there are still some pieces that need to be settled, and one of them is potentially stemming, the governor hasn't yet signed the state budget. We're all hopeful that he will, and I can't imagine a reason why he would find anything to veto in the higher ed budget. But until that's signed, I think there's certain details certain decisions about allocation of state funds that haven't quite been distributed to us yet. So that is, while we know quite a bit now, we are still learning and getting better information all the time. Some of the key decisions that fell into place late last week and over the course of the legislative budget being analyzed, these reductions we expect to have in place by July 1, those that are non-personnel or non-position related. If layoffs are required, there is a provisional deadline of September 1st, which is subject to change. The university as a whole is not considering furloughs. That was something that came up during the legislative session and has been talked about, but that is not something the university is considering. Just last Friday, we learned that where we had thought everyone's merit or COLA would be at 3% next year, there's an adjustment downward so that non-represented staff and academic personnel will be receiving 2% merit beginning September 1st, 2025, and represented employees will receive the increases that are named in their collective bargaining agreements. For many, that's 3%. Also, there is an option to pursue incremental salary increases, and Tacoma had hoped to offer incremental salary increases. The university as a whole had decided that there will be no incremental salary increases for anyone on any fund source. So even, for example, folks that may be on gift funds or something, the university's made a unilateral decision. There'll be no incremental increases. It's also important to note, because this slide mentions the potential of layoffs, that layoffs of teaching or tenure track faculty would require the Board of Regents declare a financial emergency. They have never done that, so that is a clear message at this time. We would not see or be in a position of laying off any teaching or tenure track faculty. All right, so process, we have unfortunately gotten good at making budget reductions. We have forms that are familiar to all of the vice chancellors and many of the administrators across the campus, but we will follow a process that's very similar to what's been done the last 2 years. We will vice chancellors will oversee each of their areas and manage those processes. There is a deadline of June 6th that vice chancellors should submit their reductions to me for consideration. And we do have that. There's a website link here where you can get forms, more information on personnel related issues if you would like to learn more about that, and just general instructions. And so if you are involved in preparing the paperwork for these reductions, we would ask just please read all the instructions, read all the material that's posted with the forms, so that you're prepared to address all the obligations that we have in a time like this. I will say that we released, when we began those 3% and 5% reduction exercises, we provided some targets out to the vice chancellors. We are working as we speak to get our budget data as accurate as possible for fiscal year 26, making sure as many personnel changes that have been made are clearly updated. So we are scouring that, and we anticipate having new targets that are specific to the 3.4%, and new reports out by the end of this week. And I will send out communications if it's any later than that, but that's the effort. We're right now grinding on the adaptive front and trying to get that data up to date. So finally, just remembering that we are trying to maintain a focus on our vision, our mission, our values, and our strategic goals. So keeping those in mind as we consider reductions. We are also trying to focus on building community rather than tearing ourselves down. It was a strong message among the provost and president too. When cuts start happening, people start to turn on each other. So staying focused on our mission, our vision, and as much as possible, our attempt to support community. And we have been posting every communication from the president or the provost on our Tacoma Finance and Administration website. So you're welcome to go there to get any of the history that I've been talking about. So that concludes my presentation. I think that we've got Q&A, but that it may be broader, so I will defer to, and questions, if you are one of the folks helping to prepare budget reductions and you need support, can come to me if you're outside academic affairs, or Dustin Ashley if you're in academic affairs. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Cherie. You know, one of the reasons that we are in such good fiscal standing is because of Cherie. Thank you. She came to us with statewide contacts and experience managing large-scale budgets. So we just appreciate you being here at UW. Okay, I will stay around to answer any questions, and Cherie and I will be here for, my next appointment is at 2 o'clock, so I've got half an hour that I can hang out. Thank you all.